Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Gunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Gunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Gunja Bihari Gopī Janavallabha Giridhari Gopī Janavallabha Gopī Janavallabha Giridhari Gopī Janavallabha Giridhari Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Munachari Yamunatira Yamunatira Munachari Yamunatira Jaya Radha Madhava Gunja Bihari 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 Gopī Janavallabha Giridhari Gopī Janavallabha Giridhari Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Munachari Yamunatira Yamunatira Munachari Yamunatira Munachari Om Vishnupad Paramang Sabri Vajakacharya Statara Saptasri Sriman His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Kori Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Sri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prim Shri Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasri Gaur Bhaktavinda Ki Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shaima Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Vrindavan Dham Ki Navadip Dham Ki Agamai Jamunamai Ki Tulsi Maharani Ki, Bhakti Devi Ki, Samaveda Bhakta Brinda Ki, Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Hari 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 Bol. Prabhu. One of the many gifts Srila Prabhupada has given us.
There must be a good retort to that.
The retort is to sit down and enjoy. One of the most dear devotees. Prabhus, please bless me. It's a quite silly thing that I'm sitting here. And more silly that we're talking on the 10th canto rasa dance, but we have a duty to speak. So the Dharmatma Prabhu has been kind to me to keep me for 5 minutes out of Maya by causing me to speak something about Krishna. Somebody can, let's see, where is it marked? Yeah, I'll take it here. Which verse are we doing now? 11, right?
11 to 16.
11, yes. Somebody who's good with Sanskrit can lead the Sanskrit. There are no purports on these 3 verses, but I have brought a purport from Srila Prabhupada that will be pertain to these verses. So is there someone that can lead the Sanskrit and take us through the 3 verses? You can lead it? Who can lead Dharma?
This is 10th canto, chapter 33, text 11 to 16. Tatraikāṁsa-gataṁ bāhum.
Tatraikāṁsa-gataṁ bāhum.
kṛṣṇasyotpala-saurabham.
kṛṣṇasyotpala-saurabham.
candanāliptam āghrāya.
Sandalwood.
hṛṣṭa-romā cucumba.
hṛṣṭa-romā cucumba.
tatraikāṁsa-gataṁ bāhum.
tatraikāṁsa-gataṁ bāhum.
kṛṣṇasyotpala-saurabham.
kṛṣṇasyotpala-saurabham.
candanāliptam āghrāya.
candanāliptam.
hṛṣṭa-romā cucumba.
hṛṣṭa-romā cucumba.
tatraikāṁsa-gataṁ bāhum.
tatraikāṁsa-gataṁ bāhum.
kṛṣṇasyotpala-saurabham.
kṛṣṇasyotpala-saurabham.
candanāliptam āghrāya.
candanāliptam.
hṛṣṭa-romā cucumba.
hṛṣṭa-romā cucumba. tatraikāṁsa-gataṁ bāhum. kṛṣṇasyotpala-saurabham. candanāliptam. hṛṣṭa-romā cucumba.
tatraikāṁsa-gataṁ bāhum.
tatraikāṁsa-gataṁ bāhum.
kṛṣṇasyotpala-saurabham.
kṛṣṇasyotpala-saurabham.
candanāliptam āghrāya.
candanāliptam.
hṛṣṭa-romā cucumba.
hṛṣṭa-romā cucumba. Ladies? tatraikāṁsa-gataṁ bāhum. kṛṣṇasyotpala-saurabham. candanāliptam. hṛṣṭa-romā cucumba. We'll stop there since we have a lot of verses here. The translation to this verse. Upon the shoulder of one gopī, Kṛṣṇa placed his arm, whose natural blue lotus fragrance was mixed with that of the sandalwood pulp, anointing it. As the gopī relished this fragrance, her bodily hair stood on end in jubilation, and she kissed his arm. I'll read it one more time. Upon the shoulder of one gopī, Kṛṣṇa placed his arm, whose natural blue lotus fragrance was mixed with that of the sandalwood pulp, anointing it. As the gopī relished this fragrance, her bodily hair stood on end in jubilation, and she kissed his arm. We'll read the next verse.
Just read the translation of the rest of the
translations now.
Just do the translations.
It's okay.
Okay. This is the next text. Sorry, what happened to 12? Oh, there it is. Okay. Next to Krishna's cheek, one gopī put her own, beautified by the effulgence of her earrings, which glittered as she danced. Kṛṣṇa then carefully gave her the betel nut he was chewing. Again, I'll read. Next to Kṛṣṇa's cheek, one gopī put her own. Beautified by the effulgence of her earrings, which glittered as she danced, Kṛṣṇa then carefully gave her the betel nut he was chewing. And the last verse we're reading today. Another gopī became fatigued as she danced and sang, the bells on her ankles and waist tinkling. So she placed upon her breasts the comforting lotus hand of Lord Achyuta, who was standing by her side. Repeating, another gopī became fatigued as she danced and sang, the bells on her ankles and waist tinkling. So she placed upon her breast the comforting hand, lotus hand of Lord Achyuta, who was standing by her side. So I searched a bit for a possible purport, since I have no right or qualification to explain at this level. When Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati spent Kartik in Vrindavan and Radhakund, he sat on the bridge between Radhakund and Shyamakund, and he gave lectures for 3 days. So he's at Radhakund. Now this is a eternal associate of the Lord, what to speak of liberated, eternal associate of the Lord, who before beginning his preaching mission, he made a vow to chant 1 billion names of the Lord. That means he chanted 64 rounds times 3 every day for 9 years. And when he took prasad, he would bend, the prasad would be on the ground, he would bend down to take it without his hand. He would take it just with his mouth. And because of bending at the waist, there was a limited time that he could hold his breath to take that prasad. Of course, the breathing becomes constricted. So when air was required and he had to again sit up to breathe, he finished taking prasad. That was it. He took only what he could take by bending over. So a few mouthfuls we can understand. For 9 years, 64 rounds times 3. So he's now preaching to many elevated disciples, many who are worthy of sannyas, who had been born in Srila Prabhupada's era, some a little bit older, mostly I would say, Prabhupada was one of the younger. No? This was a very elevated time for that community, this community in India, especially that sweet time in Bengal when Srila Prabhupada was born. So a very elevated crowd, the most elevated speaker, in the most auspicious and elevated place on earth, the bridge between Radhakund and Shyamakund. What did he speak? What did he speak? He lectured on Upadeshamrita, Vacho Vegam, Manasa Krodha Vegam. He didn't speak on these pastimes. So just like when you read a medicine bottle, there's a little warning there. Caution. We are not actually qualified to enter into these subject matters. But Srila Prabhupada was so kind to us that, anticipating our fallen condition, he took great pains to write everything correctly, in the right order, and very early on he gave us this teachings of Lord Chaitanya, a nectar of devotion, both of which are drawn from much lengthier smriti. So in Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, in chapter 10, Srila Prabhupada talks, the title is The Beauty of Krishna. And this particular verse, these verses are related very much to the beauty of Krishna. Of all the different qualities of Krishna, Lord Narayan and different other forms of the Lord contain so many of his qualities, but none of them contain the beauty of Krishna. He alone retains that pan-ultimate expression of himself. And these gopis, of course, are overwhelmed, intoxicated, captured, enslaved by the beauty of Krishna. So I'll just read this brief chapter as a purport, because my speaking is useless on this subject.
A few more verses are there.
Few more?
Few more verses are there.
You want to read more verses?
Yes.
You gave me 3.
Verse number 16 has purport.
Okay. But not by Srila Prabhupada. I'll read this one. Yeah. Krishna is known as Madan Mohan because he conquers the mind of Cupid. He is Madan Mohan by his favors to the damsels of Braja and by accepting their devotional service. Oh, it's reciprocal. The Lord is engaged there in the rasa dance. As the new Cupid, after conquering Cupid's pride. So he has replaced Cupid even. Huh? He is Madan Mohan by his capacity to conquer the mind of women with his 5 arrows, called form, taste, smell, sound, and touch. The pearls of the necklace which is hanging on the neck of Krishna are white as ducks, and the feather of the peacock which is decorating the head of Krishna is colored just like the rainbow. His yellow garment is like lightning in the sky. Krishna is like the newly arrived clouds, and the gopis are just like footbells on his feet. When the cloud pours rain on the grains in the field, it appears that Krishna is nourishing the hearts of the gopis by calling down his pastimes rain of mercy. The ducks fly in the sky in the rainy season, and the rainbow is also seen in the sky at that time. Krishna freely moves with his friends as a cowherd boy in Vrindavan. And when he plays his flute, all the living creatures, mobile and immobile, become overwhelmed with ecstasy. And they quiver, and tears flow in their eyes. His conjugal love is the summit of his various opulences. The Lord is the master of all riches, all strength, all fame, all beauty, all knowledge, and all renunciation. Out of these, his perfect beauty is his conjugal attraction. The form of Krishna, the conjugal beauty, is eternally existent in Krishna alone. Whereas his other opulences are present in his Narayan form. When Lord Chaitanya was describing the super excellence of Krishna's conjugal attraction, he felt a transcendental ecstasy and caught up the hands of Sanatana Goswami and began to say, "How fortunate the damsels of Braja were." He recited in this connection a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 24th chapter. How much penance and austerities the damsels of Vrindavan must have undergone, for they are able to drink the nectar of Krishna, who is all beauty, all strength, all riches, all fame, and who is the center of all the beauties of bodily luster. The center of all the beauties of bodily luster. The body of Kṛṣṇa, the ocean of the eternal beauty of youth, can be seen as moving in waves of beauty. And there is a whirlwind at the sound of his flute. Those waves and that whirlwind make the hearts of the gopis flutter like dry leaves on the trees. And when the leaves fall down to Krishna's lotus feet, they can never rise up again from there. There is no comparison with that beauty, because no one has beauty greater than or even equal to Kṛṣṇa. He is the origin of all incarnations, including the form of Narayan. Otherwise, how could the goddess of fortune, who was a constant companion of Lord Narayan, give up the association of Narayan and engage herself in penance for gaining the association of Kṛṣṇa? This is the super excellent beauty of Kṛṣṇa, the everlasting mine of all beauty. And from that beauty, all other beautiful things emanate. So we've been reading these verses about rasa dance, and clearly the gopis are overwhelmed with the beauty of Kṛṣṇa. So I thought to extract something from Srila Prabhupada's writing exactly on this subject. Of course, these subjects are for purification of our hearts, our minds, our opportunity to speak about them, to glorify the Lord. But they're also a great mystery. They're far, far beyond. Therefore, as I had mentioned earlier, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, in such an auspicious setting, with such an auspicious audience, he chose to speak Vacho Vegam, Manasa Krodha Vegam. And sitting in this asana, our Srila Prabhupada also spoke on very basic subjects. If you listen to his lectures, the strong majority of his speech, very fundamental. So it's very enticing that how I can hear these very intimate pastimes of Kṛṣṇa, because I'm trying to find the energy, the enthusiasm to go forward in devotional service. As we begin the process of devotional service, we hit at the very beginning, when we were first hearing the name of the Lord, at even the stage of Namabhas, we were feeling a relief from so much sin that's holding us down. We're feeling suddenly a great relief. So you'll notice when you're preaching, and the devotees first come into the shelter of the holy name and our Guru Parampara, they immediately feel so happy, and you will remember yourselves when you first took shelter of the holy name. What a wonderful, liberating experience. If you could have died in that moment, you would have felt, oh, this is perfection. This is perfection. But then as we go forward, we hit some dry patches, so to speak. And when you're skiing down a hill on snow, every once in a while that snow is melted and you hit the hard dirt, and you can tumble down, have quite a wreck. So this also happens to us in the early stages of devotional service. And those early stages go on for perhaps many lifetimes. It's not just, we're talking about a few months or a few years, depending on our sincerity, depending on our surrender, depending on the sangha that we're able to get, the blessings of advanced devotees. That stage of tumbling and fumbling can go on for some time. So many times we see devotees reach forward to these very sweet pastimes to try to energize themselves. In fact, this became very popular after Mahaprabhu left. 13 different apasampradayas came up, and most of them were very much absorbed in these very intimate leelas because it gave them great enthusiasm. But without having undergone the proper purificatory stages that enthusiasm immediately translates into what is called sahaja. So there's a danger. Prabhupada had said numerous times, spiritual life is like a razor's edge. This way too much you cut, this way too much you cut, you have to just stay right on. Therefore Guru. Therefore Guru. Shastra also, we see the sequence of Srimad Bhagavatam. 10th canto is 10th canto. It's quite far on. No? And that's assuming that one has absorbed himself in the previous 9 cantos and all of the other purificatory processes of sadhana bhakti. So how do we maintain our enthusiasm without this, extra high octane fuel, right? Because that high octane fuel, you put it in the wrong engine. They make a special fuel for racing cars. And it's extremely volatile, very high octane. Or you put it in a normal car, and the engine will burn up. It's not qualified to take that fuel. So similarly, we put that type of fuel in our impure mind. It can burn us up, no? So where is that balance? That balance is always under the guidance of Guru. So Srila Prabhupada did write Krishna book. Srila Prabhupada gave us these poetic verses and poetic descriptions in some of his early writings, like Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. This came out very early, I don't know, maybe 70, 71, quite early. We didn't have much that time. We had Gita. 69, 70. It was one of the first books that came out. I think just after came NOD, Nectar of Devotion. Yeah? So these, what were these? These are operating manuals for the devotee who's engaged in sadhana bhakti. These are the operating manuals. How many of you are thoroughly familiar with Teachings of Lord Chaitanya? You don't have to show your hands, but just consider. How many of you are thoroughly familiar with Nectar of Devotion? Of course, you're all studying Gita, you're here studying Bhagavad-Gita. But these are the supplemental manuals that will help you to enter in. And notice how it's so poetic. Prabhupada writes with such poetic analogies, because the beauty of Krishna cannot be understood by simply dry words. Poetry unleashes the imagination to a certain degree. It leads us to compare, just like we're noticing the new green leaves of the tamal tree. You may recall about 3 weeks ago, all the leaves fell off of all the tamal trees because there was a change of season from winter into spring. And as you know, in Vrindavan and North India, the change of seasons are quite abrupt. Just one fine day, boom. And then you go, and now we're soon going into the dry season, where even the mad dogs don't go out on the street. But then at the end of the dry season, the first rain, and the peacocks start calling, the vegetation starts blooming in joy, and even the most conservative village ladies come out into the rain and throw their arms up and get soaked in the water, right? So there are these abrupt seasons. So the tamal tree dropped its leaves coming into the springtime. But then immediately she starts growing other leaves. And you'll notice that those leaves are very, very soft, almost a furry soft. And Srila Vishwanath Chakrabarti has told us that this is the closest you can come to feeling the tender lotus feet of Lord Kṛṣṇa. So all of these analogies are there to help us to get an idea of who is Krishna, even though that's still a very far distant goal. But what a wonderful goal. And so we have to undergo different tribulations, different tests, different dry spells. Sometimes the dry spells where we feel a very small enthusiasm to carry on, those are the greatest tests that will we push on. Some of you have recently lost your Gurujis. Of course, we all lost Srila Prabhupada, our guiding light, our Acharya. And then we discover that actually, no, we never lost him. Whatever we knew of him remains. whatever he gave us remains in his words. And in his shelter, we're sitting now in this room. Can you imagine what a place this is on earth? It's full of Kṛṣṇa. And how did this manifest? Was it some architectural school that maybe Sarami Swami went to when he was younger? No. He had never seen such a thing. It came by the inspiration of his guru. It was all coming out of the heart of Srila Prabhupada. So he gave us this shelter. And then the Lord is manifested in so many amazing forms here. The Murti, and he begged them to come and stay here and bless us daily. And then he inspired Jamuna, his very pure disciple, to sing Govindavadi Purusham. And he kept the tamal tree here in the courtyard so that we can remember those pastimes of Sri Radha when she was in madness. Because of course Krishna is always being mischievous with her, and he didn't come. He had promised her to come in the night. So she snuck out at great risk in the night into the forest, fully believing in him, and then he didn't come. And in her anger, madness, anxiety, desire, she could not see exactly straight, not see exactly correct. And the tamal tree with its darkness and its curves, for her became Krishna, became the Murti of Krishna, and actually the living Murti of Krishna. And so she ran and embraced that tree. And everything here surrounding this temple, all of the creepers, the bushes, the parrots, the birds, the dust of Braj with its sparkling gems. If you look closely, you'll see. Everything is Krishna, Krishna. Everywhere it resonates Krishna. The breeze, the hot summer, the cold winter, it all reminds us to surrender to Krishna. If we wish that, if we're sincere for that. And how do we become sincere for that? Sadhu Sangha. Chanting the holy name. Following the instructions of Guru, following the vows of Guru, and soldiering on, even when it's difficult, even when we fall on our knees. And basically, my knees are quite banged up in my lifetime. I've been on those knees many times. But just by getting back up, we show our sincerity. So we've lost so many of our inspirations and our gurus, and we've lost, in a sense, Srila Prabhupada. But then, by persevering with determination and showing our faith that in fact he has not died, his instruction, his shelter, all of the wonderful things he gave us remains. By soldiering on in that faith, the Lord is pleased and blesses us. So, someday, we will achieve the sight of Krishna. Srila Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he instructs us. It's not a suggestion, it's an instruction that you have firm faith that someday Krishna will save you. Each one of us here, we're instructed to have that faith. Now, of course, that assumes someone is reading this nectar of, or this Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu in the summary form, Nectar of Devotion also, and he is a bhakta. He's following those principles. So once taking that shelter, you're instructed. You're not suggested. It's an order. Have firm faith. Someday Krishna will save me. That may be 1,000,000 lifetimes. That's okay, because I've already been here. Unlimited lifetimes suffering, birth after birth, without the shelter of his glorious lotus feet. In Shikshastakam, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was leaving and his 8 instructions, his 8 primary instructions, right? And they're quite basic, actually. They're quite basic, again, for our benefit. Huh? And especially na dhanam, na janam, na sundari. How do we give up this desire for wealth, fame, followers, and to replace the position of Krishna in the conjugal world, the conjugal relations, sundari? How do we give that up? It's very difficult because it's deeply imprinted in us. It's deeply imprinted. And we see it manifests even in those who practice for many, many years devotional service. They become victim to followers. And what is followers? Followers is just another manifestation of just sex desire. That's all it is. Because I want to be adored. I want to be in the role of the Supreme. I want to be the Purusha. Whereas I'm actually Prakriti. There is no other Purusha. There's only Krishna. There's only Krishna in his multiple forms. We are all Prakriti. When Mirabai came to Vrindavan, she was always hankering to get the association of the Goswamis. But by the time she came, Mirabai was a great lady, saint, you may know. She sang many incredible bhajans. She was actually from Chittor region of Rajasthan, and she was in the family of Man Singh, actually, not Pratap Singh, but she had married into that family. But she was a incredible saint. So she came to Vrindavan to see the Goswamis. By this time, all the Goswamis had departed, except for Jiva Goswami, who was very young at the time. And, well, at the time the Goswamis were with Mahaprabhu. He was a young man. So he was still living. And she was approaching where he was staying, and one of his assistants, one of his followers, of course, checked her and said, well, he's sannyasi, he doesn't see any woman. Exclaimed to him in surprise, oh, I thought there was only one man in Braj, meaning Krishna. And so this disciple was intelligent enough to be shocked by the brilliance of that comment and reported to Jiva Goswami, and he immediately, of course, was happy to receive her and discuss about Krishna. But still we have that imprint of Purusha. We want to be Purusha. And it's so sneaky. I don't know if any of you have maybe directly or often indirectly been aware of a person who is addicted. In fact, it's such an incredible degradation of the self, of the soul, of the person, that it's classified as a disease. Technically, it's classified as a disease, right? Addiction. And it's a very amazing thing that even when the person has gotten a hold of himself, stopped taking whatever it was he was addicted to, he will see his mind constantly looking for ways to get back into some sort of connection to that addiction. Some way to justify some issue, some problem. It's constant. It's an obsession. So we have become addicted to this idea of Purusha. It doesn't just go away because many followers tell us it has gone away. It doesn't just go away because we think it's gone away. Srila Prabhupada once said, you do not become advanced by thinking that you are advanced. And how many times do we do that? How many times do we do that? We like to fall into that comfortable zone, oh, I become a little advanced. In fact, we should be constantly embarrassed. If we're not constantly embarrassed, then we're in some sort of addicted illusion. Constantly embarrassed. You remember, of course, I'll just remind, when Srila Prabhupada was giving a lecture in a crowd of basically non-devotees, and somebody raised their hand up and said, "Are you the guru of George Harrison?" And Srila Prabhupada in that moment revealed his true and constant mindset. He hung his head and he said, "I am nobody's guru. I am a servant." If this is not our mindset, then know that we have a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do. And you cannot become advanced by thinking you're advanced or by fooling others to think that you're advanced. And this we try to do because we're addicts. We're addicts. Just like the addict, he hides his bottle of whiskey. No, no, no. And he even believes when he's telling his friend, "No, no, I'm not taking. I'm not taking." Huh? Where do the eyes go? Where do the dreams go? There you can tell. There you can tell. When the form of woman goes by, do your eyes follow? In the dreams, do they come? There you can tell. Mahaprabhu didn't agree that even the statue of a woman should be looked at. Chotahari Das was condemned. He was on Madhikari. He was begging to an old woman. Well, with this big this is the standard he set. It's a very rigid standard. Now, Srila Prabhupada was very kind to us because of where we came from, because of the condition, the pathetic condition we're in. But that does not mean that's supposed to become this new standard. Why did he write all this? Why did he communicate all this to us if we weren't supposed to rise up to that platform? Huh? So when the child garbles words and says, silly things, it's all very cute. The parents are quite enjoying it and affectionate. But when the child has been put through the university, becomes a PhD or something, if again he's talking like an idiot, it's an insult to his parents. It's an insult to his parents. So we have to get back off our knees, no matter how many times we fall on them. And we have to keep going and have firm faith that someday Krishna will save me, no matter how fallen I am. So it's important to keep very realistic. And it's very easy, especially in an institution where our position is often given to us undeserved. Just like I'm put on this seat, absolutely undeserved. In ordinary circumstances, you would be throwing me out of the temple. And we must be in that mindset and keep aware that we're put in these positions by an institution filled with devotees who are not actually very knowledgeable yet, not actually able to see beyond the Kanistha Adhikari stage. They cannot actually discriminate who is a devotee and who is not a devotee, many of them. And so it's very easy to cheat. It's very easy. Just put a little charisma on, act very confident. Don't show any humility, real humility. And they'll fall for it. It's described in the 11th canto that in the Kali Yuga, confidence will be mistaken for competence. Just like we have Donald Trump in America, right? Who could be a more arrogant and, proposing competence? And people fall for it. Of course, unfortunately, the alternatives are no better. But this is the situation in Kali Yuga. And it's the situation in our own Sangha. We have to keep our feet on the ground, our eyes in the sky. And our hands folded and our hearts humble at all times. And someday Krishna will save us. Guaranteed. If we follow the process. And someday we'll touch those lotus feet. We'll smell that fragrant sandalwood. We'll hear the tinkling bells of his devotees dancing around him. At least in the distance, it will be our constant meditation. The spiritual world is a chorus of glorification of Lord Kṛṣṇa. The smells, the birds, the breeze, the trees, the flowers, the grass, the residents, they're all in constant music of glorification of the Lord. So when you're in Vrindavan, keep a constant prayer. Pray constantly, not for this daily bread. Pray for humility. Pray to the trees, pray to the birds, pray to the devotees. Pray in your heart constantly. Please give me a blessing. Whatever you have achieved, which is obviously far above me, give me that blessing. Help me to come forward. Be in a constant state of prayer. If we're not in a constant state of prayer, we will be in a constant state of fall down. There's only light and dark. There's only light and dark. So stay always in Krishna. Taste Krishna. Smell Krishna. Chant Krishna. Speak about Krishna. Hear about Krishna. Only Krishna, Krishna. Especially when we're in Vrindavan. Preach about Krishna. And if you don't have a place to preach, find a place to preach. Attach yourself to someone who can organize, someone who can lead, and help them, and thereby become a preacher. Because above all, if we preach, our hearts become more purified because the Lord is most pleased. Because in this Yuga avatar of Mahaprabhu, it's about saving the whole universe. Right? Requires preaching. Right? So don't just come to Vrindavan and think I'm okay. I'm in Vrindavan. That's a classic formula for fall down. You must constantly be vigilant. You must be sacrificing. Give some trouble to your miserable bones and mind and body. Give some trouble to it. Push it forward to make it serve. Why did Siddhanta Saraswati say beat your mind with a stick in the morning and shoes in the evening? Or maybe it was reverse. It doesn't matter much. But why? Give some trouble to it. Why did he put his body through so much trouble? Why did Prabhupada put his body through heart attack after heart attack? Was it not trouble? Now I see some of our leaders, they think, well, he had a nice place to live. He went in a nice car. But that's all they do sometimes. Where are the heart attacks? Where's the sacrifice? We must do that. We say he's Acharya, but follow the core teaching. See the real example. So each one of us, if we want to advance, we must adopt this aggressive determination to sacrifice, to serve, to glorify. Give some trouble to your miserable bones, to your miserable body. It's not our job to be comforting it. We've been doing that for a long time. And where did it get us? Where did it get us? But what do you have to lose? Huh? What do we have to lose? We basically don't have much to lose. In fact, whatever we think we have to lose, we will soon find out it's not even there. It's a delusion. We think, oh, my body is still kind of looks okay. So, yeah, you think so. Well, it's still some health. That'll be gone in a few moments, guaranteed. Soon you'll feel, you know, you've all felt the flus or different where you feel almost like you're dying, but soon that will not be a temporary condition. You will be dying. It's very soon. Me, I was just contemplating last night about the movement and what could happen in 50 years, and suddenly I caught myself. I said, 50 years? What are you thinking about 50 years? You're lucky if you have 10. So even just like that, we can fall into this type of delusion. Some of us in this room may not have one remaining. This assembly will be constantly changing. Some will be going, some new will be coming. And that will eventually be me. So take it up now diligently. That's all I can recommend. No matter how many times you stumble, you fall, you pause, you get discouraged, keep fighting, keep fighting. This is the noble fight. This is the glorious war. This is the only way you'll achieve success in human life. It's the only way you'll achieve success in human life. Don't give up. Krishna will save you. And someday, these pastimes of rasa dance will become alive in your heart, and you will see Krishna, as Prabhupada has guaranteed. Prabhupada made a special deal with Krishna, that I'm going to preach in these very degraded countries, and they just cannot keep up to the standard. So please, if you give them their blessings, on my request, Prabhupada requested Krishna. And Krishna could not refuse him. Could not refuse him. So don't miss this chance. In your next life, you don't know where you'll be. But if you hold tightly to the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada, you are guaranteed where you will be. You will continue to be in devotional service, in the devotional service of the Lord, and that is already Vaikuntha. That is already Krishna Loka, when you're fully absorbed. Any questions or comments? I have a jury of senior devotees that I hope they are adequate to condemn me properly.
So we all have independence, and everyone likes to think themselves right. So even if you have a guru, you think, well, what can I hear from him? I already know everything. Most people in the material world, with the misuse of their independence, they think that their understanding is the proper understanding. So now that Prabhupada left, we have so many Shiksha gurus, Diksha gurus, people giving guidance. Many people hopefully are putting people at Prabhupada's lotus feet and follow instructions. So how to stay humble and insignificant, but at the same time set an example of guidance for those. I know that many things that you mentioned are prevalent in people who are not following, but if there's a genuine connection with Prabhupada, he put forward his energy, and a lot of sincere disciples have performed a lot of incredible preaching activities by their following Prabhupada, and have blessed those who have taken shelter from Prabhupada too. So, but how analytical and looking for the faults and thinking, well, he's probably not qualified anyway. Trying to say that we have to have a certain amount of faith and trust and love and simplicity in that level as well, without being overly critical to try to analyze and understand, well, whether this person's qualified to give me instructions, or he's not qualified, or he's nobody. So we have the tendency, so that might be a little too heavy, I'm sorry.
Well, okay, I'll say a couple of things. I'm sure I won't fully illuminate the answer, but Srila Prabhupada said spiritual life is not for the unintelligent. We were given an intelligence. It's not to be sublimated. We're not mushrooms to be put in a dark room. No? We have to bring the intelligence out. And the intelligence, our intelligence, has become so confused, so muddled, so insane, that it needs to be reprogrammed. Therefore, these books. Prabhupada, read my books, right? I've taken so much trouble to write these books. If you don't read, how can I help you? So this reprograms the intelligence. And then we can start discriminating. And discrimination means analytical. It means, yes, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur said there are 3 types of auspicious criticism. Sometimes the neophyte devotee gets so afraid to analyze that, even the dog in the street, which is, okay, that's maybe an uttama sees it that way, but that's not for us. That, I'll touch the dog's lotus feet or something crazy like that. Of course, I'm exaggerating. But analyzing is the nature of intellect. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says 3 types of criticism are auspicious. By criticizing the person themselves who is in error for their benefit, not to make a public humiliation, but for their benefit. Prabhu, so far as I can see, this seems quite wrong. And here are the reasons it seems quite wrong to me. That's a very auspicious criticism. The next one is, if some others are being misled, to point out. And the third one is, if you're being misled, to analyze. No, this is not correct. So, spiritual life is not for the unintelligent. Now, that intelligence can also be very vindictive. It can be very egocentric, so it can be very cruel and harsh. And that kind of criticism will destroy our bhakti lata. Again, it's the razor's edge. It's the razor's edge. And how do we find that edge? How do we stay on the edge without tipping so far and getting our head sliced off, right? Good sadhu sangha, sadhana bhakti, sadhu sangha, kirtan, all the practices that Prabhupada has ingrained into our lives and that we vowed to follow, that those practice, and to constantly read every day. Think about it, every one of us. Do you have a book or two on your desk that is part of your daily project? Do you have one? Huh? At the moment, I'm studying Chatur Shloks and Bhagavad-Gita. So each one of you should think, okay, what is my current reading project? Right? Otherwise, you're not taking shelter. And if you're not taking shelter, well, caveat emptor. Let the buyer beware. You're on your own. That's a legal phrase. It means, well, you're on your own. I can't help you. And that's what Prabhupada is essentially saying. I'm giving you shelter, but you have to take that shelter. And all of these issues, which are quite dangerous issues, they will be resolved in this total absorption in sadhana bhakti, sadhu sangha, reading Prabhupada's books.
One of my sources of inspirational reading is the ISKCON Prison Ministry newsletter, because you spoke about being saved, you spoke about addiction. And I recall one letter from the devotee who began his path in Krishna consciousness as an addict, got clean, was in the temple in the 70s. This and that happened, relapsed, went to jail, got clean again, came out, started practicing, relapsed again, robbed with a gun or something, got really in jail. Something else happened. And he writes how at one point it was like, I can't do this. I'm too fallen. I'm too bad. I can't live. And at that time he relates how like a little voice inside, Krishna, saying, you think I can't heal you? And he received that, gave him again the strength, and now he's still alive, and he's again clean, and he's still in jail. But with hope. So, thank you.
One of the, I've never been in this, but I've heard about what they call Alcoholics Anonymous, and they have what they call 12 steps, right? And the orientation of those 12 steps is to put the person in the correct mindset so he can fight his addiction. And it's a very interesting parallel to what we have to do, right? And one of them is that if you speak to a reformed addict, he will say to you, although he's not drinking, I'm an alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic. He lives in that state of humility. He has to, so that he's kept on guard, so that he's always kept aware that any minute I'm going to fall back down, and this is the mindset we have to have. That any second, who are we? We can put on fancy colored clothes. We can have 1,000 people thinking we're the greatest saint on earth. And in 1 second, Maya can pull us down. She can pull Brahma down. Who are we? Who are we? We may have thought ourselves into a very high position. We may have convinced a bunch of silly people that we're great. But that's a very dangerous mindset. We are alcoholics. We're always material-holics, material sense-holics. And we have to live in that shame. Yes, sorry to say it. Read the prayers of the great acharyas. There is a shame that keeps the humility alive.
I like that. Sensaholic.
Sensaholic, okay. It's approved by the president.
Just to add to that 12-step program, because and you did mention that these are, we all are, as I said, we're all addicted. But addiction can get to a certain point where it becomes, the first step in the 12 steps is to admit to ourselves and to others that our lives have become unmanageable. And so...
That's Arjuna's...
That's the first step.
Arjuna's surrender to Krishna.
And the second step is to accept that there's a higher power that can to surrender to a higher power. And then there's all the 12 steps. In fact, there's what's called the Bhakti Recovery Group, which I think everyone should know about, because for some, our addictions can actually really, truly make our lives unmanageable, and there's help. There's ways. It's not, I mean, of course, the whole process of Krishna consciousness is there, but there's a certain sangha you mentioned. The AA and NA programs are based on the principle of sangha, and a certain kind of sangha that's very helpful.
Sorry to keep talking so much, but on this issue of Sangha, I'm sorry, Maharaj, I'll just say one thing, that do you have Sangha? That you should analyze. Devotees, I mean, unfortunately, it's a sad thing that some devotees feel they have to come to me for some personal guidance or something. On occasion, I do, quite often, counsel devotees. And every time I find myself asking, who is your Sangha? Who is your Sangha? Is there someone that you actually respect enough to open your heart, to confess your weaknesses, and who is kind enough to take that confidence as sacred as it is, and to respond to you with great love and honesty? If you don't have that, you're in trouble. There's another, you can check, like you check on the dashboard of your car, I'm out of gas, I don't have any oil, the car is overheating. There's one of the checks. Do you have someone like that? If you don't, I'm sorry, you're in danger zone. Your engine's gonna poof, explode. Sorry. Maharaj, Kavichandra Maharaj.
Regarding addiction, I forget what John Lennon asked Prabhupada, how do you know who's the real devotee? Prabhupada said whoever is the most addicted to Krishna. Right?
Yeah.
So, addiction to Krishna would be good. You can't really love Krishna. Huh?
Krishna-holics.
Prashadaholics. Always a good question, Ma. Please.
Last one. They gotta eat.
She's absolutely a Muni of good questions. Yeah.
That puts a little pressure on me. I'm always enthused by your classes, Prabhuji, and I really appreciated two things that you mentioned about one, how we need to be more introspective, what kind of dreams we're getting. When we see something beautiful, where do our eyes go? Like that. So I have one question related to that and then another question. So my first question is that hopefully we do have hope that one day, okay, so what is it that we need to proactively do so that we can rid ourselves of these tendencies? So there is one thing having noticing it, accepting it, and then there's another thing to proactively do something about it so that we may take benefit of having been introspective and therefore move forward in our spiritual life. That's my first question.
Well, each of us is in a different body, a different situation. Your guides, your gurujis are different, all of course in the harmony of Srila Prabhupada's shelter. But one should take some trouble. I'm just being a little redundant here. Push yourself. I have options of comfortable life in America. I'm the eldest. My father adores me. He's a lovely man, has a fabulous house, which becomes mine someday, on a lake, surrounded by a forest. If I go there, credit card, car, freedom, I have my deities there, I can stay. So many opportunities. And I can make a justification. Oh, this is very nice. I'm walking in the woods, I'm chanting my japa, I'm doing my, worshiping my Thakurji. But I find that I fall. So because of I'm a male. I had been a preacher on the front lines for many decades. So I push myself. I come and I move around, as I've said, in villages in Rajasthan. I have to stay in mud huts. I have to turn the fan on high so I can cover my head to toe so the mosquitoes don't totally eat me in the night. And, you know, I have to live quite austere. The villagers, just their standard is pretty shocking for most of us. But I'm forcing myself to do something which is uncomfortable because I've been aware that every step we take towards Krishna, every trouble we take, Krishna will take 10 steps closer to us. So push ourselves, come out of our comfort zones, grab for real sangha, not chit-chat. That's an important thing. Have friendly and loving and even jovial relations with devotees, of course. Wrestle with them, whatever. Be close with devotees. But those sanghas must be centered around serious relationships at the end of the day, where you can really confess your problems or hear advice and push yourself to preach. Somehow, set up an online. It's amazing when you go online today, how many devotees just pop up out of apparently nowhere and they do a nice podcast and they get a following. Whether it's 100 people, doesn't have to be 1,000,000 people, even 100 people. And then you could start a correspondence with them. If you're out chanting or preaching, you meet someone, take their name, take their email, start preaching to them. Push yourself. Be busy. So that when you wake up, you have to write a list. This is how it was working for Prabhupada. He would chastise me. He would say, where's your list? because there were so many things to do in the day. He knew if I wasn't making a list, I would forget. So if you're not waking up in the morning and thinking, oh my God, I have to write a list, there's so many things to do, I'll never get them done. Be that busy, push yourself. And then the distractions become immediately very small. And discipline yourself. You know, when you see your eyes roaming, look down at the feet. Look down at the trees. When your ears start hearing silly things, chant into your head or chant out loud Krishna's name. It's a matter of pushing yourself. Therefore, Bhaktisiddhanta, I quote too many times, beating with the 100 times in the morning, beating again in the evening. It means push yourself. Your mind is not your friend unless it's on a dog leash. Then he's the best friend. But you have to have a stick and you have to have a leash on him, or he will turn on you and bite you very hard. It's like a pit bull. Very dangerous dog. But when he's under control, he's a very good dog. The mind. Push, push. Each one of you, doesn't matter, ladies, elders, everyone, do something. Preach this gospel of Mahaprabhu, of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Preach. It's so easy now with the internet. If you physically can't go out into the villages, if you can't go out into the cities, then get online and work hard at it. Put hours in and study. Somebody writes you a good question. Sometimes I get a question online and I ask, please give me another day or two. And I work at it, I study at it, and I try to write something that's meaningful, that will change them. And it helps me 10 times more than it helps them. So it's also selfish. Our self-interest is to serve Krishna, to glorify Krishna. I think I'm delaying this class, no?
Finish it.
Huh?
Finish it.
Okay, I'm getting the hook.
This is not the boot.
We're all very fortunate here to be together. Honestly, I don't mean to, I am actually trying to get more milk sweets from him, but we have a lovely temple president who keeps us in a nice spirit as a community. Appreciate him. I know he hates that, but I think it should be said. And so many nice devotees come through here, so many senior devotees, and all of this beauty surrounded by Braj. If we can't get serious here, we're in pretty bad shape. So reach out to other devotees, pick up the books, pick up the beads, take the process again. Remember, you will fall down. Like I said, my knees are so banged up. So many times I fell on my knees. But as they say in boxing, it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get back up and keep fighting, right? But just keep fighting. Thank you very much for tolerating me, and your inspirations are very, very appreciated. Hare Krishna.